Okay, let's try this again. Welcome back, everybody. This part of the video is going to show you how to constrain your cam in a section of follower rod assembly. Okay, I'm assuming that your axle and your handle and all that crank works. You need that to work before you move on to the next step. Okay, so what I'm going to do right now, first off, we need to place some parts. So click place, and we need to find in your flash drive your parts. So we are going to need a follower bushing. Looks like that. So click that, and I want that to be in the up and down rotation. So I'm going to rotate that X. That looks good. And I'm going to suggest you only place one of these things at a time. One follower rod assembly, I mean. So now I need my follower bushing. I won't know that's the follower bushing. I want that follower rod end. So that. And that needs to be rotated, or nope, not the X. 3 and 4, back to where it was. I need this thing to be rotated around the Z. There we go. Drop that right there. Next, I will need a cam. And I'm just going to use this one. That was a fun cam. Open. I'm going to rotate that around the Y-axis so it's pointed in the right direction. And now I also need a follower rod. I didn't give you any follower rods, however, you did just draft this thing. So rather than dropping another axle in, what we're going to do is we're going to make a follower rod. That'll be our first follower rod. And what I would suggest you do is go ahead and create 3 follower rods, because what that will allow you to do is that will allow you to create 3 individual length pieces. So that way all of your follower rods can be a different length to give you more abilities and more customization with your automata project. Okay, so now I need to place my follower rod 1. Open. That's pointed in the right direction already. Okay, cool. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to place the follower bushing inside of the first hole. Okay. Now, to do this, it's going to be very similar to those things, except I can't have this one turning around. I need to be held steady. So first off, I'm going to go ahead and constrain it. So that way the axis going through that follower bushing, let's rotate this around so it's easier to see. That axis, I need constrained to that axis. Apply. Close that window, and what we're going to be able to see is that we can move this thing up and down, but we cannot move it left and right. We can also spin it, which is not something we want to be able to do. So now we need to find our work plane. There we go, there's our work planes. I want to turn the visibility on that work plane on for a moment. And now I'm going to go ahead and constrain a flush constraint, or a mate, it doesn't really matter, between that work plane and that work plane. Apply. So now, when I turn that, ooh, that shouldn't be happening. Yeah, cancel. We don't want those changes to have occurred. Okay, I don't know why that's working, probably because my computer is currently being taxed really badly right now, and things act funny when your computer is being bogged down this much. So the next constraint that I need to make, I need to do a mate constraint from here onto the top of my box. So I'm just going to select that surface, And now I'm going to rotate the box and select that one. And now click apply. And it worked. Okay, so now I'm going to close that out. So my bushing is now in place. The next thing I need to do is I need to put my follower end onto my follower rod. So to do that, I need a couple of work planes here that are not present right now. So double click the part in order to gray everything else out and to open up the part file. See how it says return here? That means return to the assembly model view. Right now we are manipulating the part file. I'm going to create a midplane between two planes here. That midplane is wanted. I'm going to do the same thing from the front to the back. That one, that one. So I've got my two midplanes going that way. Now I need to create an axis at the intersection of those two. There and there. Okay, that's exactly what I want. Now, to try and save on some of my computing power, I want to turn the visibility on this work plane off. Work axis, work plane 2. I'm going to shut that visibility off. Okay, I'm not going to need that. So now I'm going to go ahead and click save, and I'm going to go ahead and return. Now, the first constraint I'm going to make, I'm going to lock this axis to this axis. So, axis of my follower roller to the axis of my follower end, or follower rod. Okay, closing that out, I can move this thing left, right, and the follower rod does not move from its alignment below it. The next, I'm going to do a mate constraint between my work plane here and one of the work planes in the rod. Click apply. Now I can move this thing left or right, and those things do not move relative to one another. The next one is the most tricky to do. I need to do a mate constraint with the square end that's in the bottom of this thing that square and the bottom of the follower rod. Okay, now no matter what I do, those things are going to move together. Generally it takes 3 constraints to lock 2 things together. Next thing I need to do, I need to constrain the follower rod in place. Okay, now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that this work plane here is always going to be perpendicular to the rotation of the axle. So I'm going to do a simple mate constraint there. That work plane to that work plane. Apply. Okay, now just to try and show you what this looks like, I cannot turn this thing in any other direction now. I can move it all over the place, but I can't turn it. I cannot rotate it. Next, I want to make sure that the axis of the follower rod and this follower bushing are always lined up. Alright, now what that did was it made it so this will always line up through the hole. Now, typically you need 3 constraints to hold a part in place. That's true for this as well. The only thing is that my third direction, I want that to be determined by my cam. So that transitional constraint I'm going to make will be against that surface. We'll set that in a moment. Now, the next constraint we should do, we should lock the axis of rotation of the cam to the axis of rotation of the axle. So that to there. Click apply. Testing it. I can't move it up or down, but I can move it left or right. That's exactly what I want to see. Okay. The next constraint will be just a either a mate or a flush constraint, it doesn't really matter, but relative to one of the work planes in the axle. So I need that one, and I need that one. Click apply. Close that out, and basically, at this point in time, when you turn the handle, it turns the cam. Now I need to make another constraint to lock this bisecting work plane that goes through the cam directly underneath my follower rod. So I'm going to do a flush constraint, selecting that one, selecting that one, apply. Now, when I rotate this thing, it will rotate my cam. I can't move the cam left or right now. Now, this is the one that's the most taxing on the computer. I need to make a transitional constraint between this surface and that surface. Crud. Okay, and we're back. After some troubleshooting, I had to replace my double clamshell or double snail cam with this simple eccentric cam. There was just too much going on in that cam for the assembly to accept it. So I've replaced this cam just following the exact same steps that I showed you before. Now I'm going to constrain the surface of this thing to the surface of this thing. So we need to do a transitional constraint, and it gives us this moving face 1 and transitional face 2. Okay, so the moving face 1 is that. Transitional face 2 is that. Click apply, and then cancel that. When you turn the handle, it moves the follower rod. Okay. Now, you just need to repeat this 2 more times. In order to help you out, what I would strongly recommend you do is you come over here through your browser, and you see where I hover over a wall and it lights up over here where the part is? You can turn the visibility on parts off. Okay? And what that'll allow you to do is see through it, so it's easier for you to actually make your constraints and things like that. So, go ahead, continue on, make your other 2 follower rod assemblies, and then place your models on top. Have fun, good luck.